I was a director in a business that Hunter Southall, the company that I now work for, bought. So that was about 16 years ago. And so myself and three other directors had a very difficult 3-year period where we were having to demerge the business, find new offices, retain staff, retain clients, and everything else. We were backed by a private equity business, a very large private equity business, but we were now an absolute minnow on their portfolio. So we always knew that once we got it settled down, that they were going to sell us off. Fortunately, we had done such a good job that they wanted to reward us along the lines of giving us more say as to where we would end up than we might ordinarily have had. And so we were touted around the market, and we all agreed that Hunter Southall was the right place for us to land. And so that purchase completed. And I was mightily relieved that we were now part of a larger group, had that backing, and I was quite happy and contented to take a more back seat. I was still only in my sort of what would have been mid to late 40s at that point. Not very long after coming into the business, the person that was heading up the side of the business that I was on left, and I was asked if I would kind of take up the reins. And actually at the time it was almost the last thing I wanted, and it also coincided with a sort of deregulation of one part of the business, and so we were going through quite a significant change. And our MD of the time said, "Look, Alan, you've done change management. Look what you did over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. Step up to the plate for 6 months, and then we'll review the situation. But you've got to help us get over this hump." And so I'd worked through a series of interesting but challenging times over the course of those. So what have we been talking about? 15 years or so. Let's just kind of round it up. And I got to a point where I was thinking, I feel pretty jaded by all this. I'm definitely not ready to give up the workplace. I'm definitely not ready to give up the income that's associated with it as well. And so this would have been about 2017, and Steve became aware of a book that I know you'll be very aware of, The 100-Year Life. And while I was on holiday that year, I read The 100-Year Life, and I just found the whole thing fascinating. So that set me thinking as to, well, I know I don't want to leave the workplace yet, both, as I say, financially and mentally. But I do feel as though I need to take some time out of the business, and I think that will be good for the business as well, because I'm such a long-termer here. I become the natural port of call for people as well. So I agreed with Steve that I would take 3.5 months out of the workplace. Now at that point, it's worth saying that within our terms and conditions of employment, if you've got 10 years service, you can take a sabbatical for up to 6 months, and for 3 months of that sabbatical period, you will receive a third pay. That was obviously a bit of support to make that decision. But of course, what it also meant was I wasn't going to be receiving 2/3 of my pay. So I very much viewed it as an investment. And whenever I've spoken about this, I've always said it was an investment in myself and my family, because I was giving up a certain amount of money for 3.5 months. But I felt that if I did it properly, then I would get the payback as a result of longer time in the workplace, and then both physically and mentally as well, and from a family perspective. I very much approached the sabbatical as we're not doing loads of traveling. We did do some travel, but it wasn't, we weren't traveling for two months of it, etc., because I wanted it to be an experience of not working. One of the things that I did before I went on sabbatical, obviously I told all clients, and obviously the whole business, and one of the commitments I made was I would not be in any way connecting with the business over that period of time. So I took the 3.5 months out, Do you know what? The business didn't fail without its managing director being in it, and I was proud of that. So I came back into the business. Everything was absolutely fine, and it was all fine with clients, etc. So that was 2018. 2019 was fine. 2020, I was already starting to think, well, how do I want this to be going forward? Because yeah, all of that was great, and it definitely did rejuvenate me. But I was starting to think, you know, where do I want this to go now? Come sort of 2021, I spoke to Steve again and said, look, I think the time is now right for me to have a change of role. And it needs an opportunity, it provides an opportunity for others to step up to the plate. So during 2021, Steve and I worked on the assumption that I'd be stepping down as managing director at the end of the year. We announced it to the business, or I announced it to the business in September of 2021, and that was bizarre. So again, I think this is quite an interesting experience that probably will resonate with others, but it was absolutely what I wanted to do. I'd worked with that full frame mindset in frame that I was going to be stepping down as MD at the end of September. And I made that announcement, and I almost immediately felt a sense of bereavement, grief, loss of purpose. Not, I wasn't leaving the business or anything else, but it was unbelievable how my own decision it impacted on me, and it lasted all the way through to the end of the year. We then had a 3-month transitional period, so I continued to work 5 days a week as I handed over responsibilities to the two guys that we split the role across. In truth, after about 4 to 6 weeks, that the job was largely done. And then from April of last year, I moved to 3 days a week. Well, I didn't feel the need for a defined title initially. So I'm a director, I'm a board director of the business anyway. But actually, again, this was something strange. What I started to realize, both in terms of my position in the market, you know, that sort of, if you like, almost personal brand bit. I know a lot of people in the pensions industry or whatever. Because I didn't have a defined title, I felt a little bit lost, and I think people were not entirely sure as to where, you know, as to what I what I was or who I was, or anything else. So I discussed this with Steve, and so my job title at some point in spring of last year became Chief Commercial Officer. It's obviously C-suite, but it enables me to do, you know, whatever I kind of feel is appropriate, or that Steve wants me to do. But at the moment, because I'm doing other things within the business, things that I wasn't previously doing, I'm quite rejuvenated by it. So I don't have a specific next stage yet.